trouble. Hi, Frank.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
Yeah, we
And
we
everybody
met
else,
a
of
long
course. How
time
are you
ago,
guys?
and when did we meet, and where did we meet? What was that about?
Oh my, that is a long time ago. Let's take a backstage video, a photo. I think one of the first times we met was actually in the UK while we were doing a road show, and I still remember that because it was not my first workshop, I think, abroad, but it was one of the first tours that I actually participated in. And these were all these nice locations like racetracks or a museum. And I truly remember that when I started out, I only had like 20, 30 people in a room.
Yeah,
And then after a year, they were like sitting outside, and I was just going like, the UK is awesome.
yeah, yeah.
And that's
We
actually
we
where I met you. And we
we
became
sh
friends almost immediately, I think.
yeah, we shared a car once, going from one seminar to another. I can't remember whether that was in Sweden or
No, that was
can't
in
remember what
Denmark.
it
Oh
was, but
my.
I mean, the two of us in the car is putting some stress on any suspension of any vehicle and things, really, with the two of us. But
But do you remember when we ate at night at that restaurant? You told me you're the son of a butcher and you didn't
yeah,
recognize anything on the menu, and you told me take a burger. And Anouk and I took a burger, and we saw everybody eating like cow's eyes and all kinds of stuff, and we just looked at each other going like, "Oh, that wouldn't fall nice." Yeah,
anyway,
that
enough
was a
about.
really fun time, but it was terrible because when I came home, people said, "Did you enjoy Denmark?" And I was going like, "Yeah, I got on a plane at 6 a.m. Then we met up. Then we went to the trade show, and I met up with you, so that was fun. And then I believe at 11 o'clock or so we had dinner, and then the next morning at 6 o'clock we had to drive in that small car, and a week, me, you, and some other guy, all the way up to Aarhus and back. And then I became home, and I was going like, I didn't even get time to stop and take a picture. The only thing I remember is you, me, and a week in a car, and we only had one or two breaks to take a pee, and that was it because everything was booked so tight. But man, it was
Yeah,
fun
yeah, it
when
was
looking
fun.
back.
I enjoyed. Yeah, we've got together a couple of times, and I can't believe this is I said to you before we went live. I can't believe this is the first time you're on Academy, because you should have been on here 10 years ago. I know you're
I'm
involved with
offended.
Kelby training for a long time, and Scott's an amazing guy and things, really. But yeah, anyway, um, Frank, before we get fully going, and we're looking at the images for tonight, we've got quite a few images. We've got not only the 8 images, but we've got the kind of the building up to the shot and everything else with it. Let's talk a little bit about you and the background and everything else with it. So, when did photography come into your life? Where did all this start?
When I was young, my parents were always into video and photography. So I literally always tell to people I was almost grown up in the darkroom with my grandpa holding a little, like a brush to dodge and burn, literally in the darkroom. And I thought it was magic that you had a blank piece of paper, put it into some buckets with stinking water, and something just magically appeared. And you could even control it with a brush. And I think at that time, maybe I was 9 or 8.
Wow.
And I think after that, we were very much into video more. And later on, I bought a camera and I was just doing it as a hobby, going to the zoo, taking some pictures. And then we ran a very busy computer company, and somehow that went wrong for me. And we got something a little bit with a health issue, like a huge burnout. And we just took over the company. And the only thing they told me to do was play video games. And I hated playing video games, but I loved photography. And a lot of people asked me like, "Hey Frank, do you want to take a picture?" And I was on a how do you call it, a photo club.
Yep.
And we had this guy shooting models, and we had this guy going to the forest taking images of trees. And they said you have to pick one of them. And I knew if I would go into the forest with the guy shooting trees, one of us wasn't coming back because that was boring as can be. So I thought, you know what, let's do model photography. I don't care for models at all because I thought that were all guys going around like, "Ooh, I love the colors." And I was shooting sports at the moment. I just loved the dirt of the track. And model photography was way too clean. And then I just found out that during those workshops that we followed, like, hey, this is so amazing. We have, of course, a beautiful girl, but somehow that didn't attract me. The thing that attracted me was however I placed my lights, I had 100% control over everything. When I went to the racetrack or to a soccer match, I didn't have any control at all. It's just where you sit down and that's the shot. And that's great. But when you are controlling your lighting and you have total control over a set, you can make it dark, you can make it bright. That's where storytelling starts. And I think at that moment, I saw a documentary about David LaChapelle, and I'm gone. That's it. And at that time, I stopped playing video games, and I thought, you know what? My way to recovery is not video games. It's working with models. So when Anouk ran the computer company from Monday till Friday, I was doing photo shoots with models every single day. And we had some models that loved to come over, so they came 2 or 3 times in a week. And I started retouching, and I really, that was my way up. And you can, of course, say like, okay, now you're healthy again, so now you can start working. And somehow that never attracted to me. And at that point, one of our customers, Bibi Shoyadi for our home theater company, and he's a very famous piano player. And somehow we got into contact. And he said like, oh, I have a photo shoot tomorrow. I don't feel like it. I hate photo shoots. And I just, out of the blue, said, I can take photos. And he said, sure, you can do the photo shoot. And I hang up and I was going like, oh my God, what did I do? This is a world famous person. I only shot amateur models and I have strobes that I don't even know how to place yet. I have one softbox. I did the photo shoot with him. And at that point, I found out it's not about the gear that you use. It's about how you communicate with your sitter and that you know your stuff. You really have to know it. So when you shoot a famous person, it's, first of all, you are a little bit scared, of course. And I was brought up with the very simple knowledge, everybody's equal. So I don't really look up to people that way. But still, it's a very famous person. So you want to do it as fast as possible. And that's where actually the technique comes in. You set up your lighting, you use your light meter, you use a color checker. And at that point, when the talent comes in, you just take your shot and that's it. And for him, that was a big surprise because he said normally they mess around with their lighting. They don't know how the camera works. If I want to look on the laptop, they just flip it down. And with you, we just aimed it towards, we be like, okay, here you see the images coming in. And somehow that was a revelation for him and for me, because I thought a professional photographer, they just place their lighting and everything is perfect. Oh, was I wrong? And I think a year later, we got a lot of questions about, hey, can you teach workshops? And I was going like, no, you need to be a master. And to be honest, the only videos I really saw were Dean Collins. Yeah. And when you know Dean Collins, that's the master of photography and the master of education. And then I started watching on YouTube other stuff, like, for example, a guy explaining the inverse square law, light halves and doubles. No, it's in the name, it's squared. And I saw all this stuff on YouTube and I was going like, if people really believe this, that you don't use a light meter because no model is 18% gray, that's weird. Your camera meter is 18% gray, your light meter is incident. So if all this, sorry to say this, shit is going on, let me just make a few videos. Let me just teach one workshop. Yeah, and that went totally wrong. And a few years later, we sold the computer company and we went full blast into home theater and photography. And that's now my main job, photography and home theater. So Excellent. With the home theater, we do calibrations and projectors for 4 numbers behind the comma to be totally perfect. And with photography, I'm super creative and I don't even care about 10 numbers in front of the comma because it has to be creative. So those two balance out perfectly.
In the timeline, when was the big jump? So, you know, what kind of year was it for you? So in other words, when did you become ill and when did you kind of really pick up the camera seriously?
I think that when I got that burnout, I was like 22, 23. And I think a year or 2 later, I picked up the camera, but not really serious. And I think a few years later, when we moved to Emmeloord, that's actually where we started the photography. I think in 2012, 2013, that we really started to do model photography and not just sports.
Yeah.
And that was the big break.
There's a few questions I've had in beforehand. One was from a guy who was on about your technical ability. He's obviously been on a workshop with you before, but it was referring, do you think your technical ability to do with computers has translated the transition into, you know, the technical photography of today? In other words, were you a nerd and are you still a nerd?
Am I a nerd? Look behind me. I have comics over there.
Well, I know that, but
look at what I'm holding here. It's the guitar.
I'm not playing the guitar tonight. Yeah.
You know how the area is called where I sit now? It's called the Bat Cave, literally, because it's all comics. It's all all cases with Batman figures and horror stuff. And so, yes, I'm a big nerd and I'm proud of it, aren't we all?
Yeah.
But I think the computer company, I think your knowledge about computers helps you to be less afraid of something like when you shoot tethered. It's not that difficult, but you have to know a lot about computers. And the main advantage for us when we start doing tethering is that normally when you connect the cable and it works, that's fine. Everybody knows that. But as soon as you have to go into your menu of your camera and switch over stuff with USB, that becomes a little bit tricky, but we can still do it. But now you have a problem that you have a laptop, you connect a hard drive, it works, you connect your cable, it doesn't work. This is where people start to panic and start to actually think the cable doesn't work.
Yeah.
With the computer backdrop, I know that there's something called drivers. So we just start to just plug it apart like we know it has to work. What's the problem? And I think thanks to the computer company, we just know how to take a computer apart and we know every part of the computer. So that helps a lot. And of course, also when something with Photoshop goes wrong, you don't need to be a computer wizard, but it just helps a little bit that if you see something in your screen and you go, oh, that's the GPU. That's the graphics interface where it's going wrong. Let's disconnect it. You see, now it works. So let's change the driver. So yes, that helps, but it's absolutely not necessary. Just don't be afraid of technique.
Okay. I'll just give you a quick whiz of the images that we're going to be looking at tonight, just because we've got these and we've got the setup shots and everything else with it and things. So those are the images we're going to be looking at, guys. Let me just pop over to Bridge. And we've got that ready on screen and things ready. Another question before we officially start. As far as lighting, what kind of lighting is your favorite setup? Are you a 1 light, 2 light, 3 light, 4 light, many light?
The only thing you can't ask me.
Okay.
Very simple. You have to see lighting as, photography. A lot of people go about lighting and light meters and cameras. Forget about that. Storytelling. When we look at art and we start all the way back when we still were in caves, why did we draw? We didn't draw because we were bored. We draw because we wanted to make attention to something. Like, for example, I just killed a buffalo. I'm a great big man, so I'm gonna paint on the wall that me alone, I forget about all the 100 other people, killed a buffalo. So now when somebody comes into my cave, they know I killed a buffalo. Now, when we go all the way back to the painters, what did they do? They predicted images from, for example, the Bible or religious. It was always storytelling. Now, when we look at, let's compress everything together, the whole history of art, let's compress that together to this. And now just look at 1 year social media, boom. But what do you see on social media? You see selfies, duck faces, you see at this moment artificial intelligence. When is the last time you really got excited about a photo? I can guarantee you it's a photo that told a story. And in the past, they used that very, very smart. Think about the Marlboro Man. Nobody wants to smoke. But if you look at the Marlboro Man, you want to smoke. And that's super, super smart marketing because they give you the idea that that's the lifestyle. And the photos are 100% aimed at that. So when we look at this setup, for example, it's only 1 light. It's a small Giotto softbox with a grid. The reason, however, is not about the lighting in this case. It's about the story that we wanted to tell. And this workshop is actually called more like the expression. So we always have, of course, techniques in the workshops, but we also have a red line called movement or expression or glamour or cosplay and a lot more. And in this case, we wanted to show that with styling, we can already set a mood, but you need a model that is able to do expressions. Now, when we look at Claudia and you just go through the images, those were shot in order, not in order, concession, is that the right term? After each other? I'm not English by native tongue, but so all these images are shot in the same workshop in a few seconds after each other. The thing is, Claudia is so incredibly good with her expressions that for me, it was almost impossible to choose the right image. So at that point, I just retouched a few of those images and thought, you know what, we're going to create a blog post about this, why it's important to have expressions in a model. So that's sometimes you do a setup and you only pick 1 image, And sometimes you do a setup where you have 6 or 7 images, and then it's nice to have all those images next to each other and create like a sort of flow in that image. And I still don't know which one is my favorite. I think this one actually, because her expression here is so beautiful. The lighting is almost perfect, and you see that little bit of run over with her makeup. So I think this one is one of my favorites from that set. But
so going back to the question, are you a single light man as a rule, or are you a multiple? Do you instantly think about, you know?
Oh yeah, that was the question.
You're going to need more variety and everything else with it?
No, I see lighting pure as my storytelling mood. So if I can do it with one light, why complicate it? Do it with one light. And I know Rick Salmon stole something from me. Rick, if you're watching, I still remember. Rick was over here and he had a setup with, I believe, 2 or 3 strokes. And I was just looking at it going, right, Rick, don't. This is way too complicated. Bring it back to 1. So we started joking around at dinner, and I actually told him, you know what? Next time you have students, tell them, if you think you need 2 strokes, use 1. If you think you need 3 strokes, use 1. If you think you need 4, book a workshop with Frank Doorhof. Of course, that was a joke, but what it actually means is incredibly important. When you set up lighting, you see so many people starting out with a big softbox and an accent light and a light there. They start to figure out, why the hell isn't it working? Well, I can tell you that big, huge softbox is overpowering everything. So why not do the same thing as an artist? Start with a black canvas. Take off your strobes, take a picture. It should be pitch black in a studio. Okay, there we are. Now you're going to find your focus point for your story. If that's the face of the model, that's great. If it's something else, like a guitar, first focus on getting that guitar right. As soon as you have that right, now you're going to look at your image. What do I miss? If you don't miss anything, perfect, that's it. If you do miss something, I think I like to open up the shadows a little bit. Don't use Lightroom or Photoshop for that. Why fake it when you can create it? Do it on the set. We use a technique called light in light. In other words, we have one more focused light source on our model, like here. And then we have a huge umbrella behind that, 2 or 3 stops lower, depending on the look that I want. And that will open up the shadows. The main advantage of that technique is that when you do it in Lightroom, you will infect the whole image. When you do it in the set, you still keep that headroom and that nice dark contrast. So that's why we do it on the set. So I'm not a one light person. Often I end up with one light because it's enough. But if you really look closely at most of my shots, it's not one light. There's always a little bit of a kicker on the side to give just a little bit of opening up. And of course, when I use light in light, it looks like I'm using one light, but that's often a spot on the face or a Fresnel, and then a huge softbox or umbrella behind that light under the same angle, just to open up the shadows. So you have bright light, softer light, and lower in intensity.
Okay, just down the questions for a minute. What's your lighting equipment at present? Are you Elinchrom or are you somebody else, or what are you?
I used Elinchrom for many, many years. And then I switched over to Hensel, and that had nothing to do with Elinchrom, by the way. We left as really great friends, and we still have contact with them. And I wish them all the best. And if somebody asks me, like, which strobes do I have to buy, I always tell them Hensel or Elinchrom. Those two are awesome brands. But you know, Mark, time progresses. And we are in an economical situation where not a lot of people can spend 900 euros for a strobe. So when Hensel became a little bit more into energy and not so much into fashion photography, I thought it was a great time to just leave Hensel. And at that point, by the way, I believe they fired all their ambassadors. And so for me, that was a great point to actually say, you know what? We are working with Nissin speedlights, and they are not powerful enough. We're working with the Hensels on location, but I'm carrying 25 kilograms and a huge thing, and I can only shoot 250 images. And I was looking at Godox, and I was going like, that looks really interesting, but I don't feel certain things that they're doing. And thanks to a friend in the States, we came out at the brand Giotto. It's two words together, geek, so nerd, and photographer. So that fits me very, very well. And they built a strobe that is similar to the Godox. It's priced slightly lower. And now I have the opportunity to shoot in the studio with 400 watt strobes with a very bright modeling light, but I can take the same strobes and go outside on the battery and just use them as HSS or ATTL, and shooting 400 watts outside with a huge reflector on high-speed sync, dude, the sun is gone. It's like a little spot in the sky and everything else is black. And I could never do that with the old gear because I was always stuck at the X sync of 125th of a second. Now with the G-Cotos, I can shoot up to 1/8000th of a second, and it's very, very small. So at the moment we use the 400 watts in the studio, and we have 200 and 250 watts. Those are a little bit smaller. And we take them just with us on location, and you can get 500 shots from one battery. So I'm absolutely happy as a clam with, now I can sell somebody 3 strobes for 900 euros. And that's in this economic time, and also with people doing more and more on location and in their own studio, I think a much wiser choice than the more expensive brands. But you get what you pay for. The quality of Hensel and Ellinggrom is of course higher, but do you need it? And that's the question. If I can do it with G-Coto, why can't you?
Okay. LED and the future was a question we had through. What's your thoughts on LED for the kind of work that you do?
Okay, I have to be very careful now because Nanlite is one of our sponsors, and I highly love Nanlite. Literally, I adore their products and they're awesome. We mostly use them for video and sometimes as accent lights. And I can tell you in 1 second, not in 1 second, I can tell you very quickly why. Try to freeze a jumping model with LEDs. It will never happen. And some people say one time in the future it will happen. No, it will never happen. Because you need, for a jumping model, you need f11 and you need a flash duration of at least 1/2000th of a second. And that's on the low side. You have to really time it that the model goes up. There's this one point where she thinks about, should I go down or further up? And in planet Earth, it's always down. It's weird if you go up. So that's that floating point. That's where you have to shoot if you only have 1/2000th of a second. If you have 4/1000th of a second, you can shoot up and you can shoot down and the model is frozen. Try that on ISO 200 on f11 with a LED. It's not going to happen. The moment it's going to happen, you're going to burn your model to a crisp because there's too much light. The only way that it can happen is if you are able to shoot with new cameras in the future that have an insane high ISO without any noise, and you have to be in a studio that's pitch and pitch dark. So there will never be a moment where LED will completely replace strobes. However, if you're just shooting portraits, if you don't do anything with motion, LEDs are awesome because it's literally what you see is what you get. No guesswork, no modeling lights. You set it up, you shoot it, that's it. Change your shutter speed a little bit and you're done. So yes, if you do motion, no. If you do anything else, LEDs are awesome.
Okay. One word answer. What's your favorite accessory to go on a flash? One word.
Ooh. A Fresnel.
There you go. Great. Let's go through. So you're talking about expressions here. How much do you lead the expression in communication with the subject when you're kind of looking for the shots and things? So are you directing the whole time, or you're expecting your subject to kind of do their thing?
I am directing, but not the way that you think. One of the things that I always tell people is there's a lot of negativity in the world. Don't put any more negativity into your set because you will see it. So what I do is, first of all, I talk to my model in a way that they can't respond. So never ask them, how is the weather? Because at that moment they start to talk and you don't want your model to talk. It's not like you don't want your model to talk, but you can't take a picture when your model's mouth is moving. You go, can you please shut up? Can you please? And that doesn't work. So I try to talk, we're going to get great pictures. Oh man, you look awesome. This is great. And I just go into this train motion where they can't interrupt me. So I do take my breaks. I'm a little bit more relaxed than I'm now, but I am constantly talking. And then I have this little trick, and this is awesome. It works every time. Let's say you have a model that is really good or is really bad. With really bad, I will start to go like, okay, can you turn a little bit to the left? And I will never say, oh, that sucks. I will say, that's great. Now try the other side, because the model turned the other way, because her left is my right, right? So when I say left, she will go right. That's the problem. So I will always be positive, like, hey, that looks awesome. Now try the other way. Now, when I have an image that I really like, I do something that is also something that a lot of sporters do. You know, I exercise a lot and I love rowing. When I start with rowing, I want to do 8.5 kilometers. When I start out with 8.5 kilometers, I will never finish because I'm dead tired and I'm bored. So I always say I have to do 3. Then when I'm at 3, I say I have to do 5. When I'm at 5, I go like, you know what, my lucky number is 7. Let's go to 7. Then I'm at 7. I go like, dude, you're not a pussy. Let's go to 8.5. And I'm at 8.5. And I do exactly the same during the photo shoot. I try to get the energy up as high as possible. And I'm not going to break it down. I'm going to say, that's an awesome shot. One more. Now, that awesome shot is true. That's a great shot. That's the best one I got. Now I will take 5 more shots. So I say only one more, but I take 5. If in those 5 shots, there's one that's better, I will go, okay, one more. And I will do 5 or 4 more. The reason I do this is the same thing that I use with rowing. If you tell a model this is the final shot, somehow they will find some energy, and it can be only 1%. Those eyes will start to lit up a little bit more. That smile will just be a little bit more. That pose will be a little bit more tight because it's the last one. And there's a lot of last ones. So models I work with a lot, they actually said, how many last ones, Frank? I said, just shut up and go. But for new models, and especially models that are inexperienced, this is such a great technique because the model thinks, oh, he must really like me because he keeps shooting. He says only one, so he keeps shooting. So the model really dives into that energy. And for yourself, it's like, hey, I got great shots and look at the energy. Okay, next shot.
Okay, so we've got a few shots here with the guitarist. So let's just go through those a minute. 1 second.
Don't give her too much credit. She doesn't play. Well, a little bit.
I know, but she looks like she's playing.
Yeah, good coach.
Okay, now let's start back at the beginning. Can you talk about the setup first and how it developed?
Yeah, very quickly. This is shot during a workshop. And I just got this guitar in. I bought it at an auction, and there's a story about it. And the story, and I'm going to do that really fast. This is a custom-built guitar by John Doe, and that's actually from Vintage Guitars. And the story is that the guitar was built for somebody that was really successful with country music, had a lot of hits, and then hit rock bottom. A rapper found out his music, started to do rap music, and then she got into the limelight again and became very famous. Of course, this is all make-believe, right? This isn't really happening, but that's the story that he gives to his guitars. So when I got it, I was going like, you know what, we're going to do the same thing. So this image is actually based upon her starting career, but then the part where she hits rock bottom. So she's now sitting in a small bar, sitting with her guitar. Now, the thing is, if you look very closely, it's a maple neck, and that reflects like crazy. So the first thing I did was set everything up for the guitar. I didn't even notice the model at that point, just the guitar. And I told her, keep it like that, don't move. You don't have any movement. So she was sitting there. The only problem was we wanted to create depth. Now, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that, of course, material gets light in a different way. Like a guitar will reflect, and also a microphone will reflect. The problem was, if I placed the microphone the correct way, so close to the model, it wouldn't get that nice lighting effect you now see on that round part. Now, another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that the camera doesn't see depth. It only sees stuff that's closer as bigger and further away as smaller. And that means that as long as you move it on that axis, you can get away with a lot more stuff than you think, because that microphone is not usable that way. It's way too much in front of the model. The reason for this is I'm using only one strobe to light both the model and that lighting effect on the microphone. So we shoot tethered, so the only thing we did is place the microphone in the correct position, look at it for the modeling lights, and I thought I got it, take a picture, not good enough, move the microphone more towards me. Ooh, this looks really nice, a little bit more. Ooh, that's overblown, just push it back. And that means that it looks like she is playing live and she had a lot of motion, but in essence, it's really tight. So when you go to the other images, you will see that we keep that same angle a little bit, but I play with my position to make it look like they're all a little bit different. As you can see here, I just move my own position. And that's what we call actually the, how do you call it, the soap opera effect. If you move the camera too fast, the magic is gone, because you can see there's no wall there anymore. But I just wanted to show you how far that microphone is in front of her. And of course, we're using a light in the back with just a normal light bulb. Now, if you wonder, like, how do you combine strobes and lights? That's super simple. you have to remember, we call that an ezelsbrug. I don't know what it's called in the in English, like a mnemonic or something, where you remember something. We have that holy triangle, right? ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. Now with a setup like this, if you know you're going to combine continuous lighting with strobes, you place your strobes as low as possible. And that's one of the main advantages of stuff like G-Koto, because I can shoot at 128th of power. So that means I can shoot f2.8 at ISO 800. With the Hensels and the Ellingroms, you can't do that in the studio. You end up a little bit higher. The light in the back, it's very simple. You set your aperture for the strobe, you set your ISO for the strobe, you don't touch those anymore. And now you use your shutter speed to let in more or less ambient light. So when you start out at 125th, you go like, yeah, I really like this, but the light in the back should be a little bit brighter. And everything else, like magic, will stay exactly the same. You just lower your shutter speed and you will see the light coming in. Now, do you remember, guys, when I told you guys that if you use a big softbox, it will infect your whole set? Imagine with this setup using a big softbox, you will never ever see that light in the back, because your big softbox will overpower your continuous lighting, and you can use your shutter speed whatever you want, but you will never see that light going up. That's what a lot of people email me about, like, hey Frank, we did a setup like this, you told us about the shutter speed, but whatever we do, we don't see the lights going up, it's still the same. And then I say, can you show me a picture of how the light was set up? In all those cases, the light is hitting that continuous lighting. You have to split those. Use flags, use angles, use a grid. I don't care, but split your set. So that's how that image came into fruition. And of course, we have a little bit of the setup here. These are not the images that we actually used, but here you can actually see that I'm using one light in the back, and that's actually lighting both the guitar and the inside of the microphone. The outside of the microphone is lit with the same light that is hitting our model. So we're using 3 lights, one continuous lighting, one sandwich between the guitar and the microphone to make sure that we have separation with the smoke, and then one softbox aimed directly at our model's face, and that's also lighting the microphone. A very simple setup, but very tricky to pull off.
Funny enough, we just had any tips on getting rid of smoke in a small studio?
Embrace the smoke.
Yeah.
What we do is we just open up the door.
Go for a coffee. It's a difficult thing to do in small studio spaces.
Yeah, and in all honesty, we now use those smaller smoke machines. Like normally we use those big smoke machines, and they take 5 minutes to warm up, and then they blow the whole studio up. We're now using those smaller ones, and they also have attachments that we can leave it on the floor.
Yeah.
Now, if you watch the digital classroom from this afternoon, we actually shot guitars and a ukulele with those smaller smoke machines, and they are way less powerful. But then in a smaller studio, it's poof, it's gone. So that's like magic. So that's really cool.
Okay. How do you collaborate with fashion designers and stylists and models during the shoot? What's the key kind of ingredients for you?
I think the key ingredient is communication. Just listen to what the client wants and be able to overrule your client. Sometimes I know what's best for a brand and the brand owner doesn't. And that sounds really arrogant, but it isn't meant that way. When you look at an image like this, there's a flow in the image. And sometimes a client wants something that's really static, and that just doesn't work. So what I normally do, and that's a little bit of cheating, Mark, and I'm sorry for it, but what I do is I intentionally, for example, outside, no, I don't want to wear sunglasses. Okay. So I let the model look a little bit down without sunglasses, and they wear the stuff that the client wants. The client see the image and they go like, oh, raccoon eyes, all that black stuff under the eyes. I said, that's why I want her to wear sunglasses. Now, when she wears sunglasses, I let her chin up a little bit, shoot from a slightly lower angle, so there's more power in that shot. The client sees the new shot and go like, oh, I really like that. I don't know why. Well, I know because I'm shooting from a slightly lower angle and the model is looking up, so it looks more heroic. But by using that technique, I can literally force my client to start using sunglasses. In the end, they always tell me it was the right decision. As a photographer, we are trained to look at lighting. A brand owner is only trained to see how his clothing looks. We have to steer it. If you as a photographer are afraid to go against your client, don't fight with your client, but just show them with the images what you mean. Often you can talk for hours, show them the image, and then fake your image a little bit. So if you want one image to look bad, shoot it under a slightly higher angle, make your model look a little bit to the side, not too much, because then it's obvious. And then the final shot, the one that you want, you go a little bit more down, get that hero shot, and you're done. And the client is happy and you are happy, because you don't have to Photoshop those eyes out, and you don't get later from your client, hey, I really like the shots, but those eyes look terrible. Yeah, that's what I told you on the set, right?
Before we go on to the next image in the setup then, Anne's asked, how did you get the light on her nose and mouth? I think she's referring to this image.
Same way, a small softbox, a Gikoto SL26, that's the smallest one with a grid. And I aimed it slightly down because we wanted, of course, light on the microphone and also on the guitar. And we wanted just a little bit of light on her nose. This is actually the shot where we went for. The other ones are more like, this is how we set it up.
Yep.
And after that, it's just very simple. The lighting is set up. I can't change that anymore. The thing that I can change is the way that my model looks. So it was just very simple. Felisa, can you move a little bit this way? Okay. Yep. Oh, I love it on your nose now. Can you tilt up your head just a little bit? There we go. That looks awesome. And you take the shot.
Great. Now, can you talk us quickly through this image setup, please?
This is the second setup. This is when she got back into her famous period. We wanted to do something funny, so we took a little rocking horse, and her clothing was great. This is just blue seamless with one strobe on the back and two accent lights and one huge umbrella as our main light. The trick in this one is the plexiglass on the floor. A lot of people struggle with white backdrops and they can't get the floor white. It's always a problem. Now, the first thing you have to solve is the double shadows from your accents, and that's simple. Use strip lights, and don't place them like this, what we normally do. Place them like this, because if you place your strip lights going up, you will never have that double shadow. Put in some grids, and you will never have double shadows. The problem is lighting on the floor. You can do that in Photoshop, but then your model floats. That's not what we want. And you can put strobes on it, but then you have difference between her feet and her legs. We also don't want that. So you have to realize that we don't shoot with light. We don't see light. We don't see color. The only thing we as human beings see is reflections. Every color has a different frequency. Every material dampens different frequencies and shows different frequencies. That's how we see color. Now, you can focus your light and make your light do what you want. Angle of incidence is angle of reflection for sunglasses or whatever. We use exactly the same technique here. By using plexiglass on the floor, first of all, you get a double shadow reflection. With a mirror, you always have a double reflection because you have several layers on top. That looks ugly. Plexiglass is one layer. We use transparent plexiglass, so on all colors it looks perfect. As soon as we start using white, this is where the magic comes in, because the white reflects in the plexiglass, and the plexiglass actually reflects it back up. Immediately you have a perfect white backdrop without any extra Photoshop work, and your model doesn't float, but your model is connected to the floor thanks to the reflections. So that's why we use the plexiglass on the floor, and it just looks awesome, I think.
Cool. I've just put a link, guys, in the chat panel to do with Frank's website, so you can kind of head over to there when you're kind of ready. I'm just trying to move on to the next image. Okay. So the seamless image, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah. Now, sometimes you are hired to do stuff that you don't want to do. So my opinion was always that if I go to a studio, I want to shoot in a studio. So my rates are really weird. If you hire me to do gray seamless, my rate is way higher than if you hire me to just do it in a studio. Why? The gray seamless I can also do at home, so there's no motivation for me to go to New York and shoot gray seamless. So now I come home, I show those images. I was in New York, and people go like, yeah, we see gray backdrop, nice. So I was hired for phase one to do the introduction of the 100 megapixel phase one camera, and I had this beautiful model. But in my contract, there was also that I had to use gray seamless. So at one point I said, you know what, why do I have to use gray seamless? Is it my gray seamless? Yes, after this, we're going to throw it away. I said, is there any rules how I have to use the gray seamless? He said, no. I said, awesome. So I told my model, let's get a knife and stand behind the gray seamless and just cut it open and put your head through. And then when she put her head through, I was going like, oh, this looks nice. Let's place a light behind her. And that's actually the second shot. But because I was going for phase one, I was going like, you know what, it would be great if you have it like a selfie camera. So if you go one image back, I think you see the selfie camera one. Yeah, and then I thought, you know what, it doesn't make any sense to shoot a selfie like that because you can't see it. Let's bump the volume of that backstroke a lot more, that we have lens flare. Let's make it come all the way through the paper and let's shoot it into phase one. And I turned around to my client and I said, you know what, I just shot your commercial. With the new 100 megapixel, you're breaking through the barriers, like the gray seamless, like everything is gray. This will give color and lens flare in your shots. They looked at me to go like, did you prepare this? I said, no, it's just spontaneous. That's the thing that you have to do. Always try to break your own stuff. If you have shot something 100 times, raise your price 10 times and just tell your client, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something creative. Can I do my own thing? And you just shoot first what your client wants. Let's say you book 1 hour, 15 minutes or a half hour, you do what your client wants. And you always say, I want you to book me another half hour. And that's where I start to play with your clothing, with your accessories. I kid you not, 80% of my clients don't use the images I shot in the first 30 minutes. They all use the images I shot in the second one, because that's where I got freaky. That's where I start to experiment with lighting. That's where people go like, this is different. And that's the thing that, again, communication is key. Talk to your client. And if they don't want to listen, show it. If you show images like this, why should you shoot a model in front of gray seamless if you can do shit like this? This is way nicer and way more fun. And the model loved it.
Questions. Do you feel that you're more of a portrait photographer shooting in the style of fashion, or a fashion photographer shooting in the style of a portrait photographer?
I think photography is freezing moments in time that never come back again. So I more see myself as a storyteller and not as a photographer of fashion or portrait. You know, if you put yourself in a, let me rephrase this. You know, I love music, right?
Yep.
One of the bands that I absolutely love is Queen. Now, if I'm going to ask you, what kind of music does Queen make? A lot of people don't know how to. Is it rock? No. Is it metal? Absolutely not. Is it opera? Maybe. If it's disco? No. Is it a ballad? No. Queen doesn't have one style. And I think when you are into the creative realm of photography and the creative realm of creating content, be it video, painting, or drawing, if you put yourself in a label of I'm a portrait photographer, that means that I'm aimed at shooting models' faces, because that's a portrait, capturing the essence of a character or the character that you create, right? It doesn't have to be the person. It can also be the person that it emulates, like, for example, with a cosplay workshop. So I think if you would call me a photographer, I think just a photographer. I love street and travel photography, and with fashion, I do fashion, but I also love cosplay. I love portraits, but I also love full bodies and motion. Don't put yourself into a box. Think outside the box, right? Place yourself outside that box.
Okay. Another question. What are your main challenges that you? Sorry. What are the main challenges that you have faced in your career so far? Besides COVID, let's not discuss COVID.
Trusting people and being disappointed in people. And I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to. Over life, you experience people where you do a lot of work for, where you think they're your equals, or companies where you work for, where they go like, yeah, we will take good care of you. And then at the moment you leave that company, they start to go like, yeah, but you signed a contract 7 years ago and we still own you for 36 months. This was our hosting company, by the way, where we had all our servers. And they just sent me a bill for 9,000 euros because we wanted to go to a different company. And we don't pay that, of course. So we got legal help, and now they brought it back to 1 year. But it still means we have to pay 1 year of fees, while they promised me 7 years ago, you can quit whenever you want. And then when you want, they go like, they look like these little letters. Do you see that? You signed for that 7 years ago. And I think that are the most challenging parts. Like, how do you navigate in a sea with sharks? Because we are people that are people. We are very open. We don't work with contracts. We just trust each other. And that's something over years I learned that doesn't work. You have to have a contract. You have to make sure that everything that is said is notated. If somebody tells you, oh yeah, but don't worry about that, because if they tell you don't worry about it and get it on paper. And creativity, the biggest challenge is, don't put yourself in a box, because as soon as you start doing your lighting setups according to a book, like you see a diagram, put your lights at 45 degrees. Oh guys, please never do that. Place your lights where it's needed and not under a diagram. By the way, if you look at those diagrams, 50% is wrong if you read the light correctly. But I think that's the most challenge, how to stay creative. And for me, it's easy. I just watch a few video clips of Lady Gaga or whatever, and I want to do this, I want to do this. And then a week looks at it like, how many years? I want to do this in a month. And I go like, nah. So that's the biggest challenge, I think, in business and in creativity. Just as long as you don't push yourself, I'm fine. And I want to add one thing to that. If there are people here that play guitar, you probably know the name Steve Vai. And over the years, I got a lot of great advice, but the best advice I always share with people is what Steve Vai actually told in one of his podcasts during COVID. He said, where a lot of people fail is the word fail. If you start using lighting, or you want to play something on your guitar or whatever, and it's really difficult, what is the first thing you do when it goes wrong? You say, I failed. The word fail, however, has a very negative influence on our psyche, because if you fail, you're a failure. If you're a failure, you're a loser. If you're a loser, you're worthless. We as human beings are never worthless. We are creators. We are people with a mind and a body. So what he actually told, and this is so genius, he said, you never fail. It's impossible to fail as a human being. The only time you fail is when you stop trying. So when something goes wrong, don't tell yourself, I failed. No, I learned how not to do it anymore. And that's the road to success. I started doing that a few years ago, and dude, it really, really took a load off my chest, because I always thought when I tried out a new lighting setup, it didn't work. I got frustrated, like, why doesn't it work? In my mind, it should work. And it's often just an inch. I do lighting setups that are very precise. And as soon as I think about failing, I just found out that my energy level got down. As soon as I start thinking about, no, now I know how not to do it, my energy level came up, and I just worked 10 times faster. So in essence, there are 3 choices in life: give up, give in, or give it everything you got. And I think the last one is the one to go for.
Okay. Quickly talk about this setup, if you could. So we're out on location.
This is shot in Amsterdam. And this was actually shot for Kelby, for one of the Kelby training videos. And it was just the idea of what can we do with a strobe on location and with shutter speed. So here we have a rather low shutter speed, so you can see everything in the back. You also see the limitations of, at that moment, are still our Erlengram stuff. This was shot, I think, on f16 or f22. So you see depth of field all the way. And in all honesty, when I look at an image like this now, I go like, this is one of the reasons why I love shooting HSS, because with this image, I didn't want the background to be in focus. I would love to have the background a little bit out of focus. When you go to the other images, I absolutely love that everything is in focus. But that's the choice we now have as photographers with HSS and high-powered strobes. Now we are able to not use ND filters, but to actually just shoot it on a very high shutter speed. And it opens up so many more possibilities. Not that these images are wrong, I absolutely love them. But you know, the thing is, Mark, when you look at those images, you know what's the most important element in that image?
Well, for me, it's subject expression.
It's the dress, the red.
Oh, the red, without a doubt, yeah.
There's a rule in photography and video. It's called the 60-30-10 rule. And I'm gonna spoil probably a lot of video guys now, but there's a 60-30-10 rule, and it means that 60% of your set or your image should be one color or one family of colors. 30% should be a color that's related to that color, and 10% should be an accent color. Now, one of the great masters about this was actually Caravaggio, a painter, and Yeah, a great painter. And what he did, and this is so smart, just look him up online, Caravaggio. What he did was, and I always imagine this, he painted the whole thing like Rembrandt, really dark, nice tones. And then the whole painting was done. And Rembrandt would have said, I'm done, not Caravaggio. When Caravaggio was done, I have the feeling, right? This is my interpretation. He just sat down and he said, okay, I'm done. Now give me that magic brush. And then he had one magic brush with the brightest red that was available at that time. And he just put a few strikes with red. And now he said, now it's a Caravaggio. When I found out about that 60-30-10 rule, I found out that a lot of the shows I watched online, even Star Trek, uses it. You will never see certain combinations of colors. I started to dive really into filmmaking and how do they make those colors? And we are fooled constantly. Color evokes emotion. Think about The Abyss. We all know the movie from James Cameron, The Abyss. When you are on the lowest point in the ocean, in a concrete bunker without any windows, and you turn on the light. I always do this during seminars. I ask people like, so we're down at the lowest point in the ocean, in a concrete bunker without windows, and we turn on the light. What's the color? 90% will tell you it's blue. That's insane. First of all, it's a concrete bunker without any windows. You turn on the lights. It's the same light as above sea level because you are so deep down. There is no light. But now imagine this. Imagine the abyss shot with normal colors. Nobody would believe it's on the bottom of the ocean. And that's how smart colors works. So if you use those colors in your photography, you will have a very, very advantage above other photographers. Because imagine this dress to be blue. She will disappear in the backdrop. There's no model. There's nothing to draw your attention. And this is the trick. We in the West are learned to read from left to right, top to bottom. And our eyes are always an attention grabber. If you look at my images online, you will always see that I use a red logo and it's always on the bottom left. And you know why? When you look at an image, you go like this and normally you leave the image. But because there's a strong attention point with the color red on the bottom left, you are forced to look at an image like this. And as soon as you're there, our eyes immediately goes up and there we go again. There we go again. We can't leave that freaking image. Why can't we leave that image? Because there's an attention point there. And then when you finally leave the image, my image will stay in your mind because you looked at least at it 3 times. So we do the same thing with our models. Strong colors, accent colors to really make the model jump out. And in this case, red, my favorite color.
Guys, we're seriously going to run over time. So I do understand that many of you jump off. I know you moan at me when we overrun. But again, we've waited a long time to get Frank, so we're going to run on. Basically, if you haven't headed over to Frank's website yet, it's from here you'll basically kind of be able to link off to his YouTube channel, see what his workshops are. I know he's got one in June in Watford. I'm not sure if there's a few. Is there any spaces left on that yet?
Yeah, we just started promoting, so be fast. Okay. Be really fast.
So if you're based in the UK and you're around Watford area, you don't mind to actually travel to it and things really, there's a bit of a gap. I'll put that into the chat panel as well. But I know some of you will start to kind of disappear off in about 5 minutes. And again, we've waited a long time for Frank, so we're gonna keep him going no matter what. Okay, our next image, Frank, is the guy.
Yeah, I love old-fashioned. I will do it faster. I love old-fashioned photography like hardcore, and this was actually a challenge. Somebody told me they shot it with 16 strobes. I said, that's ridiculous. I can do it with 4, and I actually did it with 3. No, I'm not lying. Sorry, 4. There's also a light on the backdrop. Just use grids, and with grids and flags you can do whatever you want. And flags are actually something that you place between your lights and your subject. Place it closer to the light and the edge transfer will be softer. Place it closer to your model and the edge transfer will be harder. And that's where we experimented with here. And we have a few of those black and whites, highly inspired by George Harrell, hardcore. I just love that style. It's very difficult to pull off, but when you do, it's amazing.
Okay. And the same thing applies shutter speed here to pick up the flame, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Here we use the shutter speed again for the flame.
Cool. This next image.
Same thing. Same also with flags.
And there was questions about the post production. Typically, how much time would you spend on a portfolio image? How much time would you spend on a client's commercial image?
Both the same, about 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay. Do
Get it
you
right,
have any
guys. Get
that
it
you
right
keep
in
in?
camera.
Beg your
Choose your
pardon?
light sources for faces and make sure that your makeup is right. The only thing I do is I run it through Photoshop with a filter called Luminar, and that does auto intelligence for the skin, and that works pretty well. If I still need more work, I will do some dots and burning on the skin. But everything you see here, guys, is 90% in camera. I don't do any Photoshop with lighting changes. What you see is what you get. The only thing I retouch is skin and tinting. That's it. So in the past, you choose your film roll for the look. We can't do that, so we have to tint it in Photoshop. And the skin, that's it, nothing else. We don't change lighting, not at all.
For your own creative projects, do you have a personal image that you keep revisiting?
No, that's boring. Always something new.
Okay. What do you believe is the key to a successful collaboration with a fashion designer?
Mutual respect, but know that you're the photographer, so you know about styling. But do remember that he knows his products. So open communication, but don't ever let him overpower you. You are the photographer, you know lighting, you know poses, he knows his clothing, collaborate. And if you do that nicely, I never ran into problems with clients, never, because I take the image, he sees it and he knows I'm right or not. And then, of course, if I'm not right and he tells me why, I know what he wants at that point. So we always shoot 3 or 4 images that are okay. And then I always say like, oh, you find it okay? That's not good enough. I want you to go, wow, that's awesome. He said, yeah, but this image is great. I said, no, because you first said it's okay. Let's try something else. And then I start incorporated, for example, lens flares, up until the point where my client goes like, this is awesome. It's, okay, this is the one that we want. Now, what do you want? And then we start to incorporate it. And that's often 15 minutes and it's there. But again, if you start out, it will take longer. I'm doing this for a long time, and I just know what my client wants. And that's, again, it sounds arrogant. It's really not meant that way. It's something that you learn. You just listen to your client, you look at his previous work, and you just know what he likes. And you set up the
Cool.
lighting that way.
I've got 3 questions from the same photographer. I'm
No
in
problem. Fire.
university studying photography. How has the fashion industry changed in recent years, and have you adapted?
I have no clue, to be honest, because I'm mostly educator and I don't hunt for assignments. So when I have an assignment, they really approach us. Like recently, we did a whole photo shoot for a UK company, actually Spark sunglasses, awesome stuff. And she came over to the Netherlands and we made a huge mistake because it was raining and we should have shot it in Amsterdam, but I invited them over to the studio. And it actually meant we did a big, huge calculation error. We thought we had 2 hours to shoot, but they had to be in Amsterdam 1 hour before. So that brought it back to 1 hour, but it was 45 minutes to bring them back. Imagine this, going to a place on a location, shooting 36 commercial images, and you only have 14 minutes to do it. We did it. This is the part where the fashion industry benefits a lot from shooting with an educator, because if you have to set it up the normal way, 10 years ago, I could never pull that off. But now, because I teach workshops, I very quickly can switch between natural light, strobes, and then just bump up that shutter speed for day to night. Change your position just a little bit, and you get in 10 seconds, you get 3 completely different shots. As long as you tell your model, keep moving, and you just move around that model really fast. Okay, next location, change sunglasses. Gang, 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 gang. Next location, change sunglasses. I was tired, but after less than 15 minutes, we got those shots. And I think if you talk about how did the fashion industry change, it's all about money. Nowadays, there's no budget. So I'm just very happy that I get my assignments by asking, and I'm mostly just focusing on education, helping you guys out, and of course, running our YouTube channel, our blog, and teaching workshops. So I can't answer
I
that
mean, we've got some
question.
other questions which I think we'll put off, but they were: what trends do you see emerging in fashion photography?
No idea.
How do you stay current in an industry while maintaining your unique style?
I think just keep your unique style, and don't try to, don't repeat images, but create new images. But people somehow always recognize it's my stuff, and I don't know why, because I always try to do something else.
This next image.
Yeah, this one was shot at in a location, and this is about how you can misinterpret something. I went there with Nadine, and Nadine was still wearing her jogging shoes and jogging pants, sweatpants, and we had a model there, and the model came up to me and said, "Do you have a model with you?" I said, "Yes, Nadine." "Where is she?" I said, "This is Nadine." "Oh, if you want a real model, you can ask me." And I was going like, "You can ask me." So I saw her posing, doing stuff like this, the American top model stuff, and looking at me chewing gum, going like, "Yeah, if you want to shoot with me in a moment, you can do it." And then Nadine came out with this outfit, and you saw her going like, and almost that gum just fell out of her mouth. And the only thing I said, don't judge the book by its cover, because he was still wearing sweatpants for a reason. So and this is all cardboard. We actually threw it away after the shot. And Nadine is so amazing with this stuff. She can make Christmas wrapping paper into a dress. And she made a whole robot out of just cardboard boxes. Isn't it awesome if you can work with people like that and get paid for it?
I mean, I was lucky enough to shoot with Nadine, wasn't I? Where she was modelling for you on the Ellen Crom in the photography show, and amazing girl. I had a muse for a long time called Rio, and Rio could again do that same thing. There's some certain models with a certain creative mind that kind of they can turn basically a plastic bag into the next kind of trend and things. Really,
we always say
talk about the lighting setup here. Can you please? Can you talk about the lighting setup?
One light on the model, one red strobe in the back, and a lot of smoke. That's it.
Okay.
Shot in front of our backdrop. And this is very simple, just one light source. Again, that I think it's the 26-inch G-Koto, the smaller softbox, same here, but now also with an accent light. And the next one, we experimented a little bit here with backlighting. So we wanted to, this is one strobe, by the way. And one of my students asked, like, what can you do with one strobe? And I said, you can actually light the backdrop and the model. And with Rogue, we have this really nice omnidirectional dome, which is magnetic. And if you place that in a sandwich technique between your model and the backdrop, it will split all over. So we didn't like that. So we took the dome off, and we ended up actually with a grid and just sandwich it precise in between, exactly in between. So with one strobe, you're lighting and your backdrop and your model. And this is interesting because it saves you a lot of money, but the extra added benefit is if you use two strobes, you're working with your angle of shooting, you're using your angle of strobe 1 and your angle of strobe 2, meaning if you move around, 3 angles are moving. If you only use one strobe, only one angle is moving, so you get way better images, way faster, and you have less problems with shadows. So always try to solve it with one.
Frank, somebody's asked you to slowly spell, please, the lighting equipment that you're on about.
G-Koto,
No, just spell it slowly.
How do you mean spell it?
With the letters.
G-E-E-K-O-T-O.
There we go. That answers their question.
Oh, sorry. Think about geek and photo. G-Koto.
Okay. Brilliant. And this image, please.
It's the same one. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
This is, again, the small softbox straight from the front. It could also be a Fresnel, by the way. If you look at the shadows, I actually think it's the Fresnel.
Yeah. Cool. And then we've got the zebra set.
This is for a part. I'm an Adobe influencer, and Adobe had this new generative AI. And I hate artificial intelligence, in all honesty, because it's not creating. I don't know how you get satisfaction out of that. And with music, the same thing. You love a band and you don't love artificial intelligence. So I don't see the satisfaction in that. Where I love is where Adobe is taking it, because we actually had the chair of zebra. The stuff on the floor was zebra, and the back is all zebra. So it's all zebra. And Nadine, of course, had her clothing in zebra. The only problem was the sides. And on the floor, I needed a little bit more. And this is just amazing. You just select it and you type in zebra. And somehow it knows it's straight up or it's on the floor. And that just blew my mind. Because with clone tools, you can never get it this nice. And this is where I love artificial intelligence. Because this is still my image. It's still my vision. It's 100% something that I created. But thanks to artificial intelligence, it just saves me a boatload of work to retouch it. And I think that way, artificial intelligence will literally help us photographers to be more creative. And again, here, only one light on the model. That's it.
Okay, I think that's our images. Let's finish off with a few questions coming through. How do you balance your...
No beer.
I beg your pardon?
This is iced tea, no beer, because some people may think I'm drinking beer during a seminar.
How do you balance your work and personal life, especially with the demands of, you know, everything?
Anouk and I work together, and we both love our work, so there's actually no we don't work 9 to 5. Sometimes I watch Netflix at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and I don't do anything because I don't feel like it, or I play pinball. And then at 10 o'clock at night, I start working up until 1. There's no, you have to balance it. If you have a normal wife, and I'm not going to say that Anouk is not normal, but Anouk has the same attitude. We just work 24/7, but we don't work 24/7. We just work when it's needed and we take a break when it's needed. And there's no balance. It just all is work. And
so there's a question, how do you stay motivated and inspired in your work? Is that pretty much hand in hand in what you just said?
Yeah, it's passion. It's 100% passion. I just love doing what I do. I would love to do it my whole life. And that makes it easier. 9 to 5 mentality, no. I would never work for a boss that's... I will become a zombie, man. Come on. I want to create stuff. And let's be honest, if you can create all day, what's better? How do you need motivation if you have a camera and there's nothing there and you create something? How do you need motivation for that? That's the most freaking awesome thing you can do. Create something out of nothing. And that should be your inspiration. It's same with music. Get a drum set, play some music, and it's there.
There was a question on the inspiration. I'm just getting started in this amazing world of photography. I feel I need inspiration or direction to really take my photography to the next level. Any advice, please?
To take your photography to the next level, start doing workshops, videos about technique. Know everything about technique. Know it inside out. At that point, everything that you see, you can create. You become literally, you look at something and you go like, oh, that's a hard light source from the left top. And then you start reading light. And that's step 1, reading the light. Step 2 is imagining an image and seeing the end result and knowing exactly where your lighting is placed. And if I can make a very slight detour, I do it really fast. When I started out, I taught guitar. And I was 16 or 17 at that point. And at that point, you had this whole stuff coming up with Dream Theater and all these different modes. If you're not into music, don't worry about it, but there are different modes. There's only one scale, and that's the major scale. All the modes are derived from the major scale. So you start on the second one, that's Dorian. You start on the third one, that's another name, etc. I had students that asked me like, hey, I want to play Metallica. That's Dorian, right? Or Mixolydian. Teach me that scale. And I told them, no. You first learn the major scale over the whole neck. And they go like, no, I don't want to do that. Okay, then I learn you the scale. Other students learned the major scale first. The thing is, all the students that learned the major scale first, the only thing I had to tell them, okay, I'm playing a C now, play the C major scale. Sounds right? Yeah, sounds awesome. Okay, I'm now going to play a D minor chord. Play the same scale, but now start on the D. You will immediately find that sounds totally different. That sounds Dorian. Okay, now I play an E. Play the whole scale, but now start on the E. The students that learned the major scale over the whole neck, and they just know for the modes start on a different note. Those students can play anything they want. The students that had to learn every mode by itself first have to remember 7 modes. Melodic modes, raised modes. It's crazy. You have to know 40, 50 different scales. But if you only know the one and you understand the one, now you can do all those scales, and you can even create your own scales because you know how to create chords, how you play over those chords. You can even use different chords in the same scale and without. And now back to photography. If you know your lighting by heart and you know what your lighting does, you look at a picture and you immediately know this was shot probably with a big softbox or with a strip light. Look at the accent light, look at how the shadows fall. Always look at the shadows, never to the light. And the next step is literally just, okay, I want something like this. Oh, I need lights like that. And you will immediately find that over time, everything will just go easy. But if you don't know your base, dude, you will struggle for the rest of your life in photography, because if you don't know angle of incidence is angle of reflection, you're done. It doesn't work because you will have reflections in the eyes. It doesn't work. So learn the basics and then start watching movies with your photographer's eye. Why do you like that movie? Is it the tinting? Do the tinting in your photography. Do you like the lighting? Do you like the depth of field? Do you like the backdrops? And then that inspiration starts flowing. You can take any material like a smartphone. There's so many things you can do with a smartphone to photograph it. Trigger that creativity. How do you shoot something? How does it look? But learn the basics and use a light meter, of course.
Frank, thank you so much. Been absolutely brilliant. Thanks everybody for staying with us. In fact, we hardly lost anybody, which was a really good sign on that. Frank, I'm sure we'll be dragging you back again. It's only been 15 years, so I'm sure you can come back quicker. But thanks everybody for staying with us. Thank you, Frank. Looking forward to it. Remember, everybody, to head over to Frank's website. It's in the link actually on the website, frankdoorhof.com. And remember, if you're in and around the Watford area, or you don't mind to travel to it on June 28th, 2024, then basically head over to there and secure your place with Frank. I'm sure it'll be a great session. Frank, thank you very much. We'll touch base soon. Take care.
Thank you so very much, Mark, and bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.